Arizona's been good, but Mo Krivas can make them great.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm honored to be here, and I'm your host, Leaf Thulin, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade. And I'm excited to talk Arizona hoops with you today, and we can get into the nitty gritty. And I'm extra excited because I just went and played some basketball. Open today's show, I'm going to tell you all about NAU and the keys to the game and all that, but also the key to the season. It's Mo Krivas. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. That's $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. Like I said, today on the show, I'll break down the game against NAU, with keys to the game, scouting report on NAU, but first and most importantly, I'm going to impress upon you guys just how important the non-conference is with Arizona, already ranked 5th in the AP poll after 1 week. And what the key to the season is, it's Mo Krivas, as I said in the open. So let's dive right in. The AP poll's out, and I projected Arizona to be top 5 when this poll came out because I had Arizona 8 to start the season. And I would say if you were to look at resume, they could even be higher. But the fact that they're actually 5th overall, not just in my ruminations and projections, I'd argue they have a case for number 1 because they have arguably the best win of the season, them and Alabama. Alabama beat St. John's in New York. That's the only one that's close. And I moved both them up in my poll. They have a case for number 1, but the fact that Arizona moved from 13th to 5th and moved up 8 spots, which is the largest jump of anyone in the entire poll from already being at 13 when there's not that many spots to jump because very few teams ranked higher had lost, means something. People were impressed with what Arizona did. I had Arizona 8 before the year. Now they're 5th. I would have considered putting them higher, but that's just not how the poll works in terms of the most obvious way of doing it is, okay, unless a team loses, you're not going to move them down. Arizona's going to take a while to move up from 5, but they have every opportunity to do so. The numbers mean little as of now, but are vital recruiting pitches, having just landed Cameron Holmes, a 4-star, and having 5-star Cameron Williams committing on the 14th. That's right before the UCLA game. He's either going to Arizona, Duke, or Texas, and that'll be massive. And having the number 5 team in the country, seeing Koa Pete prominently featured, will factor into the decision. I guarantee you that. The brand and reputation is important, so having a number 5 next to your name is helpful. So my guarantee that I made weeks ago of Arizona reaching the top 3 very soon, and I said that I think they'll reach number 1 at some point, that looks pretty good so far. After just 1 week, they're up to number 5, and reaching number 1 by January, that looks very, very attainable, and it's off to a jump start after beating Florida and moving from 13 to 1. I thought it would take a little longer to get here, but I'm happy people are watching ball and seeing how good the Wildcats are. But back to this game, the non-conference as a whole, and the keys to the season as a whole. A great non-conference is bolstered by beating Florida and beating UCLA's and beating Alabama, beating UConn. You know, if you can win all of those, wonderful. If you can win 3 of those, wonderful. But a non-conference can be ruined by losing and losing to a poor team. And the metrics are seeing these close wins of the unconvincing ones, and they reflect poorly. Yeah, the committee doesn't look at the metrics necessarily, but I think it does influence the way people vote. I do think it influences the perception of a team if they win unconvincingly. And not everyone can watch every single game. So sometimes if you have a score check and you don't win by a lot, it doesn't bode very well. Purdue, for instance, moved down from 1 to 2 because they played 2 relatively unconvincing games. Arizona, back to them. Arizona was okay against Utah Tech, and I expect a sharper performance against NAU. I mentioned the other day, I think the game against Utah Tech was an experiment to see how good Braden Burries is and what role he can handle this early in the season and what role he can handle down the road. I expect more of that in this game, but maybe more sharpness from him. And the team, as my assumption would be for Tommy Lloyd, was that they would set him up to gain confidence last game. And now I think we're back to regular scheduled programming with Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley running the show. But I think there will be pick and roll featuring Braden Burries. I think he's going to shoot 10-plus times. And I think you'll see that against UCLA too. More against NAU than I think you'll see against UCLA in terms of him running the pick and roll, running the offense. But whatever the recipe was, Arizona was dominant on the interior, scoring all 58 points from within the paint that they scored from two. 58 of 93 points. We'll get to that in a moment. And many of them off of transition on uncontested buckets, right? It felt different and it felt less physically impressive, less physically dominant than it could have been and should have been after doing it against Florida and then doing it against Utah Tech. It just felt different. I expect a very, very concerted effort. Last time I said the concerted effort would be to get Braden Burries involved. I expect a very concerted effort to establish the high-low between Koa Pete and Mo Krivas early in this game and often in this game, as Krivas has struggled in offense and his defense takes Arizona to a higher level. And I expect there to be an effort to get him the rock frequently throughout this game, not just early and often, but I think frequently in the next couple games, getting him going and confident offensively is vital for this team and their aspirations to cut down the nets, both to win the Big 12, to make the Final Four, to win the championship. Mo Krivas is crucial. I expect better perimeter defense from Arizona, preventing as many drives and how many times drivers individually got by their man and then were deterred by Krivas. Like, the good rim protection was there against Utah Tech. It was there against Florida in the second half. But I think there's going to be an emphasis on not being beaten on the perimeter and allowing someone to get into the body of Mo Krivas, to get towards the rim. So I expect there to be better defense in this game, and I expect Krivas to be featured early and often. If I make a prediction similar to the one I made about Burries leading the team in scoring, which was, it was right. It was a three-way tie between Burries, Pete, and Del Orso at 18 points. My prediction would be that I think Krivas will shoot 8 shots or more, which doubles the last game against 4, and he had 5 against Florida. And it wouldn't shock me to see a very obvious effort to give him the ball in the high-low, as his confidence needs to boost. He's played kind of soft, that he hasn't had the interior dominance that I expected as a potential double-double guy on this team. I don't think there's enough rebounds to go around for him to be a double-double guy, but I do think his interior presence on the offensive side of the ball has been lacking. I think there's going to be a concerted effort to get him the ball and improve his confidence and see what he can do throughout the season, because a couple of years ago, Tommy Lloyd talked about how he's an NBA big, and then he got injured. So right now, speaking of interior offense, they haven't had their biggest guy doing anything on the interior. And right now, they're scoring 61% of points from 2. That's very, very good. And shooting over 53% from the field in total and 55% from 2. That is repeatedly excellent offense. I'm going to repeat that. That is repeatedly sustainable and excellent offense. But missing one component has been Mo Krivas, who's been solid on D, but soft on offense, needs to use and abuse those mismatches and go up strong. I expect an emphasis from Tommy Lloyd to get Krivas going before playing UCLA and before playing UConn, where his presence is more vital. If I had to guess, I'll go 14 points, 8 boards, 3 blocks from Mo Krivas in a statement game. What must be highlighted here before fans who rightfully have a complaint about the poor offense is his defense has already been very good. That's why he's the key to what Arizona can be. He protects the rim, and he changes shot charts. When Krivas is in the game, the rim is protected at an elite level on actual shots, and not just against Utah Tech, but against Florida too. He was the reason Florida's efficiency dipped in that game drastically in the second half. He protected the rim. And that allowed for Arizona to become a team that I think will be able to turn teams over. I think they should get out in transition because they can funnel into Mo Krivas and have the belief, hey, if we in fact are beaten, we can take a risk, get some steals, use our length, use switchability everywhere except for, you switch 1 through 4 with Pete. He allows a lot of versatility as well defensively. He's a wild card because of how well he moves. But everything goes through Krivas protecting the rim, much like Kaman Mala watched last year. And I think he can change shot charts along with actually altering the charts. And so his defense, though his offense, I agree with you, he's not been particularly good. And this is a big game to see what he can do. His defense has been very good already, and he holds the keys for how good Arizona can be because he is the best player on that side of the ball. To be great, which Arizona can be, and I think there is a real world Arizona is number 1 this week. By the end of this week, should they beat UCLA and some other things happen, and they're already really good based on the resume they've built. But to be the best team in the country for real, and not just by resume and who they've played, they need the big Mo Krivas to live up to his potential of what Tommy Lloyd sold him to be years ago. I expect Mo to dominate this game, but my other expectations are set to come momentarily with keys to the game. That and much, much more coming up next on Locked On Wildcats. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. That's the best part. And that's the crazy thing. I pull up Game Time because I love going to games, and just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. That's right. Go see Arizona play and get yourself fantastic seats. That the seats look exactly like what you bought. There's no poles blocking your view because there's nothing worse than that. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. It's awesome. Honored to be here. Arizona hosts NAU, and they should be honored to enter McHale. And Arizona's up to number 5 in the AP poll, where the AP polls eye test, and those voters, it begins to matter. So what we didn't love in last game, I'm going to be particular about. And here's what matters in this game to fix or to continue to build upon, depending how you want the verbiage. Here are the keys that I've made for NAU. Some of them will be redundant that you've heard in other games. The first one, I think this will be a key for Arizona all season long, and it just depends against whom, what the range of difference is. So the first one, this is the key for Arizona all season to me in terms of how great they can be. And it's rebounding at a rate that many teams will not be able to match, and the vast majority will not even be able to be close. And against Florida, who is one of the most elite teams in the country rebounding, Arizona won by 2. Florida, following that, was then plus 40 against North Florida on the glass. So they proved their elite rebounding ability and talked about Arizona ability to rebound the basketball against the best of the best. But then Arizona followed up by being only plus 10 in what was nearly a 30-point win. That's not good enough against Utah Tech. That isn't good enough considering they were outdone in second chance points in that game. My premise on this will not deviate at all this year. I said this before the season. I will say this throughout the season. Arizona has the possibility, the capacity to be a top 10 efficiency team on first shot offense, but also can supplement that offense with its amazing offensive rebounding ability with Tobe Awaka and Mo Krivas and Koa Pete on the roster. And that will make them undeniable on that end of the floor. I think against Utah Tech, they were complacent, lazy in that regard. One more point I'll harp on a ton is that college basketball has changed, and it started with Zach Edey and maybe even a touch before that, but it's about possessions, and more. If you have more possessions, you'll win. More possessions equal more shots. And so if you have fewer turnovers and or more chances to score based on forcing turnovers or getting more rebounds, you're going to win more frequently. Arizona needs to have more possessions, meaning more uncontested shots like second chance putbacks or runaways when you get the steal and turn a turnover into a touchdown, shall we say. And they won points off of turnovers against Florida and then scored 26 on fast break points against Utah Tech. And those are good if you cherry pick those numbers, but they're only plus 3 in points off of turnovers against Utah Tech. Arizona can score all day from 2 and will do so in the half court, and they will do so when playing super quickly. They're averaging over 61% of their points from 2 on the season. And what will make them untouchable for most teams is the ability to control the glass. But what can improve is the ability to control the glass on the offensive side, especially against inferior teams. And that's why in this game, my key, number one, is I want Arizona to win the glass by around 17-22 in margin of rebounding. So if Arizona gets 40 rebounds, they will have to be up 40-23 at the minimum. I think they'll end up with more than 40 rebounds in this game, though. Next key, I said last week that I wanted Arizona to shoot 4 times as many threes as they did against Florida in the matchup against Utah Tech. This time, I'm going to go attempt 15 to 23s. Last game, I said 4 times as much. They shot 3 times as much, making 7 out of 15 after going 2 of 5 in the opener. Arizona already has spurt ability, meaning that they can go on runs that put games away. Evan Mia, and I'll talk about this throughout the season, he has a thing called the kill shots where a team has a 10-0 run. And I'll refer to that. I haven't looked at this today. But Arizona's got the ability to go on those type of runs, in my opinion, because of what they can do in taking away the basket, taking away easy shots, and then running because they play quickly and they score at an efficient rate on the interior, shooting so many twos. But what they don't have is the ability to pummel a team from distance. And there needs to be a threat of three to complement the fantastic ability to score in the interior. So there's no better time to ramp up the number of threes than in these non-conference games that are bye games, meaning that you should win these games and win them easily. To see what level of three-point shooting that there truly is on the roster when there is room for error and you don't have to deviate when you're playing a team like Florida or UCLA or UConn. So I want to see 8 threes made on around 20 attempts. I know that's 40%. That's probably too high to ask. Maybe you go higher than 20 attempts. Maybe you shoot great, but I want to challenge the team to get 7 or 8 threes once more. And I specifically want to see, as I've talked about as a key all season, is if Jaden Bradley will shoot some and the willingness to shoot some off of the dribble behind screens when teams go under. That said, I don't blame him if he wants to go downhill and or take that one dribble and throw a pocket pass to Pete on the short roll. But I'm curious to see if he can hit some threes. I expect Karchenkov to be featured more in this game and shoot a couple open ones. And I hope Burry shoots 6 threes again. He went 3 of 6. The last key I think will be important is the sense of pride Arizona takes. And it's kind of hard to measure that, but I want to see the team take pride in their perimeter defense because they have an eraser on the back, which is, Toby Awaka does a good job, but it's Mo Krivas. And I want to see a sense of pride and perimeter defense with Donovan Dent looming. UCLA has not been particularly good, but Donovan Dent is a lightning bolt. He gets the rack, and if he gets into the paint and draws fouls like he does exceptionally and has done for years, it makes it a very difficult game because you draw fouls when your defense is compromised, and that happened too frequently. Utah Tech got to the paint and shot a ton of free throws, and Arizona was okay with that. They ended up preventing field goals, and they went away, but there's no way Arizona should allow 27 free throw attempts in a game against NAU after allowing 27 attempts against Utah Tech. And those free throw attempts weren't like stat padded. Those happened when the game was hanging the balance early and Arizona was even trailing. So I expect more pride taken in preventing penetration. And the last key, I guess, if you were to give a statistic, would be, can you force some turnovers on the perimeter and turn them into touchdowns? Because off of turnovers, they scored 21 points, which is good. And they scored 26 fast break points, which is also really good. Can you do that repeatedly? So my last key would be to challenge the proficiency it may be a challenge due to the proficiency of the other side, meaning NAU is not that great, but it's to make more threes than NAU makes. But because NAU is going to be compromised on the interior compared to Arizona, they should pull a ton of threes. They should shoot a ton of them. NAU actually shoots the ball very well from three. They are not necessarily the most prolific three-point shooting team because they're bashful. They don't take a ton of threes because they take good threes. But the way to beat Arizona, if you're NAU, you got to shoot a ton of threes and play. Either you're going to play super quickly or you're going to shoot a ton of threes. And so they're more likely to play a style that shoots a ton of threes than try to speed it up against a team like Arizona, who's very comfortable in a sped up game. So I think it's difficult to make more threes than NAU in this one, but that's my challenge. Can you make more threes than NAU, who in order to have a chance will have to hoist them? So that's a sneak peek about what NAU does well. They shoot the ball very well. More insights on the matchup and what the Lumberjacks' strengths are, what their weaknesses are, plus game score prediction, which was pretty close last time, as well as predictions of leaders and stats coming your way next on Locked On Wildcats. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Those are really fun, dangerous, but really fun. So make sure you try to do that because this keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And when you're making that late push and you get one of these bets to hit, there is no more exhilarating feeling. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back. I'm Leaf Tulane, and NAU, you may say, it's pretty difficult to watch NAU when you're watching 1,000 basketball games. However, I somehow stumbled across watching NAU in the opening day of the college basketball season prior to watching Arizona beat Florida. I watched Northern Arizona blow a lead against Drake on opening day of the Field of 68 opening day marathon, and it was a fun game. That was a game that was very, very competitive, sloppily played at times, but I will say NAU is better than I expected, and Drake got lucky to win that game and cover the spread for me. Drake was fortunate, and I was pleased. Drake isn't as good as they were last year, so I want to make sure I'm saying this carefully because there should not be too much of an upset alert. Because if NAU can compete with Drake, then they might be really good because Drake last year won a game in the tournament and pushed Texas Tech. It's a different Drake team because they lost Coach Ben McCollum, who has won everywhere he's gone and is one of the best coaches in America. And they played at a snail's pace, which would mitigate what Arizona does well. And there's also no Bennett Sturts, who I think will be an All-American this year at Iowa. They are both at Iowa, and most of their team is not there from last year. So NAU did not nearly beat that team, but NAU does have some bona fide strengths. So let's start with what jumps out statistically about their team as a profile. They shoot 42% from three. Yeah, it's only 2 games in, but that's always dangerous when a team is that proficient from three. The good thing, though, as I alluded to prior to the break, was that their volume of threes taken is very low for a team that shoots it that well, meaning that they shoot good shots. And when you're playing a team with more athleticism like Arizona possesses, it makes it hard to get and generate those good shots. So I think this game will be played at Arizona's tempo. I think Arizona can control the shot chart as well because they can guard the rim very well, and they won't have to do as much to defend the penetration should they defend the perimeter decently, and then won't be as spaced out. So there should be few open threes allowed for Arizona's defense for NAU to take. And as evidence of this, Florida made only 7 threes. They shot 27. I would argue that Florida can't shoot at all. I don't like their backcourt. I digress, but I've said that a couple times. They went 7 of 27. And their last game, they also didn't make any threes either. So they may have an actual issue there. I would also maybe argue that Florida got good shots. They just missed, but they're bad shooters. Arizona, however, made Utah Tech take fewer threes than usual. Utah Tech was shooting more than 50% of their shots from the field from three. They shot a little bit lower than that. So not a crazy discrepancy, but 7 threes lower than their usual attempts per game through 2 games. Utah Tech, that was their 3rd game. So maybe that is an indicator that Arizona guards the 3-point line decently. But anyway, NAU does not shoot a ton of threes. In fact, they're 282nd in the nation in terms of threes attempted. And despite it being a strength, they'll probably want that to go up against Arizona. So it's imperative Arizona prevents it by preventing drives because NAU cannot score inside. So if they go inside, don't overhelp. NAU shoots 34.7% from 2, which is 343rd in the country. And there's only 360-ish teams. So they're very bad in the interior. And I expect Arizona to be able to stop those drives and kind of trounce this team. So it's important and imperative to note personnel. I'm a huge believer when I play sports and when I watch sports of KYP. That acronym stands for Know Your Personnel. So it is imperative to take note of personnel here. Northern Arizona lost their best 2 players from last year on a team that's 18 and 16. So they weren't particularly good in the Big Sky anyway. They lost Trent McLaughlin and Carson Tout. The interesting thing about this is Tout is presently one of the best rebounders in the nation at Notre Dame, so a D1 high major school. And Arizona is a great rebounding team. So I think Arizona should absolutely dominate the glass. Back to NAU, as currently constructed without Tout, they ran out of gas against a Drake team, and they were outscored badly in the final 10 minutes of the game. Leading NAU, though, is Zach Davidson, a 6'9 forward who scored 29 against a decent Drake team and has performed well in the other game as well against Justice College, a very small school. And then a 6'4 guard named Ryan Adelman. And he's a 2 guard who scored 18. His game is more crafty than explosive. He'll shoot from the perimeter. Neither of those guys are great passers, but the ball will be in both their hands plenty. They have a clever point guard as well. And I see Arizona with a great chance in this game to impose their will early, especially on the interior, because this team is lacking true size on the interior. And Arizona should be able to dominate on the glass. And I'll be curious if they force turnovers against a team that only had 6 turnovers against Drake. Drake doesn't necessarily get out in the passing lanes or force pace the way Arizona does, but I'll be curious to see if Arizona's athleticism can truly overwhelm what is a well-coached team that had minimal turnovers in a very up and down competitive game in the very first game of the season. That'll be interesting to monitor. So let's get to my prediction. I expect Arizona to speed this game up decently and get it towards their pace. I think it'll be an uncomfortable speed for the Lumberjacks, and there'll be a lot of scoring on the inside with Koa Pete, Jaden Bradley, and Mo Krivas scoring at the basket early and often. I expect a higher dosage of Pete and Bradley than we saw against Utah Tech, trying to set the tempo for this game and maybe help the team be more sharp than the prior game, because last game you saw a lot of miscues. I wouldn't call them like full-on mistakes, but like miscues in terms of over dribbling. You saw 4 turnovers from Braden Burries. There was a very concerted effort to get him the ball and have him run the show, and I think that led to a little bit of a reliance on, we usually have Koa Pete to do this. We usually have Jaden Bradley to do this. And they weren't playing their usual aggressive ways. And I think this is going to ramp up and be more of a typical game for Arizona, because next is UCLA. So after building the lead, which I think they'll have a larger lead at half, I expect to see a lot of Burries operating for the Wildcats. I predicted a Krivas breakout. I said 14 points, maybe 15, 14 points, 8 boards. I'd love to see him get a double-double, but we'll go 14, 8, and 3 blocks, like I said. And I'll add Burries and Karchenkov combined to hit 5 threes between the two of them. I'll go with the leading scorer of the game, Koa Pete, with 20. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think he can coast to that score very efficiently, maybe 8 of 10 from the field. Like, I know that sounds crazy to expect 80%, but that's just what I expect from Koa Pete. So long as he's getting all the way to the rack unencumbered with ease like he does against Florida, and then he did super easily against Utah Tech, I expect nothing to change there. I expect him only to take good shots. He'll just be more forceful early than he was in that last game. And the final score, I'm going to project a similar final score to how Arizona beat Utah Tech, but more of a lead to be established earlier and, kind of coast at the end, as opposed to run away within the early stages of the second half. Last time I was pretty close to the score prediction. I think I said 96-65, and it was 93-67. So 3 points off on the Arizona total, 2 points off on the Utah Tech total. I expect a 20-point lead by halftime. So Arizona's up big early and then run away with it late, but don't try as hard. And I'm going to go final score 96-62. Arizona convincingly beats Northern Arizona. And I'm going to go, they knock down 9 threes as a team and are plus 20 on the glass to answer my keys. We'll review those in postcast. Please tune in for postcast. Apologies last time for postcast. I was delayed. This time will not be delayed. We'll be up and running as soon as the clock hits 0. Thank you guys for making Locked On Wildcats your first show and your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.